Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling strangely guilty, even though you did nothing wrong? Have you ever found yourself apologizing just to restore peace, even when your instincts whispered that something was off? The most dangerous manipulation rarely shouts, it whispers. It does not demand control openly. It slowly earns it through sympathy, subtlety, and emotional fog. This is the hidden face of narcissism, the kind that does not crave the spotlight, but instead hides behind humility, quiet suffering, and carefully crafted vulnerability. Unlike the loud and arrogant personality many people associate with narcissism, covert manipulators appear thoughtful, misunderstood, even fragile. They seem sensitive to criticism, wounded by life, and unfairly treated by others. But beneath that surface often lies a powerful psychological strategy built on control through confusion. Covert narcissism operates in silence. It thrives in emotional grey areas where accountability becomes blurred. Instead of boasting, the covert manipulator sighs. Instead of dominating a room, they withdraw just enough to make you chase them. Instead of openly blaming you, they imply that your tone, your timing, or your expectations somehow hurt them. Over time, you begin to monitor yourself more carefully. You soften your opinions. You shrink your reactions. You question whether you are too harsh, too demanding, too insensitive. And slowly, without realizing it, your emotional world starts orbiting around their feelings. Psychologically, this dynamic taps into one of the strongest human drives, the desire to be perceived as kind and fair. Most people do not want to harm others, especially someone who appears vulnerable. A covert narcissist understands this instinct deeply. They weaponize self-pity. They use passive disappointment instead of open anger. They create an atmosphere where you feel responsible for their emotional stability. And the most unsettling part is that you often cannot point to a single dramatic incident. There is no explosive argument, no obvious abuse, only a slow erosion of confidence. This is why covert manipulation is so difficult to detect. It feels like compassion at first. It feels like protecting someone sensitive. But ask yourself this: why does supporting them consistently leave you drained? Why does expressing your needs feel like an attack in their presence? And why does your confidence shrink while their influence grows? The answers to these questions mark the beginning of awareness, and awareness is the first step towards psychological freedom. As the pattern deepens, the manipulation becomes more refined, almost invisible to the untrained eye. Covert narcissists rarely confront you directly because direct confrontation exposes intent. Instead, they rely on emotional undercurrents. A delayed reply becomes a silent punishment. A heavy sigh becomes a message of disapproval. A subtle comparison to someone else becomes a quiet attack on your worth. You are not openly criticized. You are gradually conditioned. The strategy is psychological shaping, not explosive domination. Over time, you begin to anticipate their moods the way sailors read shifting tides, adjusting your behavior to avoid emotional storms that are never fully named. One of their most powerful tools is guilt, not the loud accusation, but the soft implication that you have failed them somehow. They might remind you of everything they have endured, subtly highlighting their sacrifices or struggles, making your boundaries appear selfish in comparison. When you express frustration, they may retreat into wounded silence, forcing you to comfort them for the discomfort they created. This reversal of responsibility is a hallmark of covert control. You start defending yourself against feelings you never intended to provoke. You start explaining your harmless actions as if they were crimes. Psychologically, this dynamic creates cognitive dissonance. Your mind struggles to reconcile the image of a gentle, misunderstood person with the uneasy tension you constantly feel. You tell yourself they are just sensitive. You rationalize their passive-aggressive remarks as stress. You question whether you are overreacting. And that self-doubt becomes the soil where manipulation grows strongest. The more you doubt your perception, the more authority they gain over your emotional reality. There is also the trap of emotional dependency. Covert narcissists often position themselves as uniquely connected to you, implying that no one understands you the way they do. They may isolate you subtly, criticizing others who threaten their influence, or framing themselves as your safest emotional refuge. But safety built on dependency is not safety at all. It is a controlled environment where your autonomy slowly diminishes. Consider how often you hesitate before sharing good news because you fear their subtle withdrawal. Notice how your achievements sometimes feel smaller in their presence. Ask yourself why your joy must be moderated to protect their ego. These are not random occurrences, they are psychological signals. And the deeper question becomes unavoidable. If love requires you to shrink, is it truly love, or is it quiet control disguised as care? The turning point begins the moment you decide to trust the discomfort you have been taught to silence. Awareness does not arrive with fireworks, it arrives with clarity. You start noticing patterns instead of isolated incidents. You recognize that your anxiety is not random, that your constant self-correction is not a personality flaw, and that your exhaustion is not proof of weakness. Psychological freedom begins when you understand that empathy should not require self-erasure. Healthy relationships allow expansion, not contraction. They encourage your voice rather than subtly reshaping it. And when you finally accept that something has been quietly controlling you, you reclaim the power that confusion once stole. Rebuilding yourself after covert manipulation requires deliberate inner work. It starts with strengthening your perception. When something feels off, pause and analyze it instead of dismissing it. Ask yourself whether the guilt you feel is truly yours to carry. Reflect on how often responsibility has been reversed, how frequently your needs have been minimized to maintain someone else's emotional comfort. This reflection is not about blame. It is about recalibrating your psychological compass. Boundaries become your most powerful act of self-respect. Not aggressive walls, but calm, consistent limits that protect your mental clarity. The covert manipulator may respond with increased victimhood or subtle pressure, but consistency exposes what manipulation tries to conceal. Self-awareness also means rebuilding trust in your own emotional signals. When you notice yourself shrinking, speak. When you feel joy, allow it to expand fully without apology. When you sense guilt without cause, examine it before accepting it. Confidence does not return overnight, but every small assertion strengthens your internal foundation. Over time, you realize that emotional dominance only thrives in silence. Once named, it loses much of its power. Once seen clearly, it becomes predictable. And once you stop feeding it with self-doubt, it begins to weaken. The most empowering realization is this: you were never too sensitive, too demanding, or too complicated. You were adapting to a system that rewarded your self-sacrifice. True emotional strength is not the ability to endure subtle control. It is the courage to step outside it. As you move forward, choose relationships that celebrate mutual growth, not quiet submission. Choose clarity over confusion, respect over guilt, and autonomy over dependency. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.